Closing our eyes, putting ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Sorry. Sorry. Interesting.
Dear God, our Father, you have shown us again how fortunate we are by blessing us with another day. Thank you for bringing us all together again this bright and early Saturday, excited to learn and always eager to be better versions of ourselves. We thank you for giving us caring and responsible adults in our midst, understanding always of our needs, and always ready to listen and support us in everything we do. We pray that we could use well all that we learned this morning, so that we may always be of sound minds, healthy bodies, and more importantly, live life with kind hearts. We pray that we may be able to take on bravely all the challenges that life has in store for us, never forgetting hopefulness and optimism in each step we take and every path we pursue. Please continue to bless us and guide us as we move towards a brighter, better, and healed tomorrow. We offer that all we do always for your greater glory. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
puso ko'y tinib ng kasayahan, dahil ako'y nasama sa tanan. Ang lahat may gintong nasa, makisig at masigla. Kapisanan ay tunay ang damdamin, suliranin itong baya'y pawiin. Ilalangin natin ang tapat sa may kapal, ay lunas sa lahat. Awit ng DNA, tayo ay mag-iwan. Magtulungan, magunlad ng bayan. Ang kailangan, ibigay sa kanan, kalusugan at kasaganaan. Ang puso ko'y tigib ng kasayahan, dahil ako'y nasama sa tanan. Ang lahat may gintong nasa, makisig at masigla. Kapisanan ay tunay ang damdamin, suliranin itong baya'y pawiin. Ilalangin natin ang tapat sa may kapal, may lunas sa lahat. Ilalangin natin ang tapat sa may kapal, may lunas sa lahat. Namin sa may kapal, pagkabay niya ang pinagdarasal. Tungkulin namin ay ang maglingkod sa mga mamamayan ng aming lungsod. Kami ang mga manggagamot ng olong gabon. OCMS, karamdaman may lunas. OCMS, ano man ang dinaranas, lahat ay gagawin para sa pagaling. OCMS, patungo sa hinaharap. OCMS, kalusugan naming pangarap. Sino pa ang tungkulin ay tutuparin. Kami ang OCMS.
To formally welcome everyone this morning, may I call in our President of the Olongapo City Medical Society, Dr. R.J. Manzo, for his opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you all for joining this early morning activity on a Saturday. As most of you know, this is a continuation of our mental health awareness celebration, the first part of which happened last month, was aimed at educating our parents and teachers regarding red flags. Mental health has been a very relevant issue in the past decade, more so this pandemic, wherein a lot of people, adults and kids alike, have been affected. There may be different manifestations, especially for children and young adults, Stress-related, substance abuse, depression are some of these concerns. And just like any other sickness or disease, early diagnosis and treatment is of utmost importance. We'd like to thank our speaker and our moderator in advance for sparing their Saturday morning with us in imparting their expertise in this subject matter. And of course, this activity won't be successful if not for all the teachers, parents, and the kids participating in this activity. Thank you for sparing your time, your Saturday morning. Good morning to everybody and happy learning.
Thank you, Dr. Manzo. Moving forward, before we move forward, rather, I would like to acknowledge our school guests this morning. So Columban College, Main Campus, and Barreto Campus representatives are here today. We'd like to acknowledge their principal, Lorela Barrera, and Assistant Principal Christine Torres, as well as Principal Seg Redondo from the main. From KCDC Montessori, we'd like to acknowledge Principal Moncada. Kidilarian Christian School Incorporated is also here. Little Angel Study Center, Quizby School, St. Joseph School, and some representatives from the Foundation for Differently Abled Persons, Zambales Incorporated. All of the teachers, guidance counselors, parents, and most importantly, our students, our kids present this morning. Without further ado, for that again, we'd like to remind you of the webinar rules. Make sure to keep all of your gadgets on mute mode, all right? Turn off the cameras while the lecture is happening. If you should encounter any connectivity problems, just log out, then re-register by clicking the link we sent or manually entering the meeting ID and the password in your Zoom apps. If you have any questions or any clarifications you would like to make, just type it in the chat box and we will have an open forum or a question and answer portion later. We're lucky to once again have our previous resource speaker moderate this morning's activity. So Dr. Gakrama is again here to join us. She finished her Doctor of Medicine at UST, her postgrad internship, as well as her residency in neurology and psychiatry at the same institution. She had a clinical research fellowship at St. Luke's Medical Center in stroke and neurovascular disease. She is a fellow of the Philippine Neurological Association and also a member of the Stroke Society of the Philippines. Currently the head of the stroke unit at ACE-MC Valenzuela and the head of the stroke unit as well at ACE-MC Bay Point. So ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, kids, most especially, Dr. Francesca Rose de Leon Yakrama.
Hello, good morning everyone. Thank you again, Doc Arl, for the kind introduction. Dr. RJ Manzo for having us here. So I will now introduce Dr. Diaz, our lecturer, our speaker for today. She is Dr. Maria Cristina Diaz. She graduated Doctor of Medicine at UST also and had her postgraduate internship and residency in neurology and psychiatry at the University of Santo Tomas Hospital. She had her fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry in Philippine General Hospital. So she had written, presented, and published various researches in neurology and psychiatry and had various teaching and speaking engagement as well. So before I welcome Dr. Diaz, she is an expert in lecturing mental health, especially in children. You can call her Doc Kit, and she is very passionate with her topic. So let us all welcome Dr. Diaz.
Good morning. Thank you for the warm welcome and the kind introduction.
Good morning, Dr.
I want to thank Dr. Chex for extending the invitation to her, and from Dr. RJ and Dr. Arman. So good morning, everyone. All 103 of us here today. So I'm glad you're all here today, and I'd like this, and while I will be lecturing, I'd like you to feel comfortable to type your thoughts in the chat. If you feel that you don't want to other people to read your thoughts, you could type it directly to me, so at least I know. Okay, so I'll share my, I'll share my screen. Okay, here we go. So to begin, the title, so thank you for this invitation to talk to you. I do know that sometimes a lot of the mental health talks are targeted towards teachers and parents, and that's good. But it's also important to talk to the youth themselves, right? Because you're the ones who are experiencing what you are experiencing. So I thought of the title check in on you, no? Or check in on youth. Meaning yung pagkamusta, di ba? Sometimes, di ba, mga musta ka sa friend mo, how are you doing, di ba? But we also want to check in on you or check in on our own selves. Kamusta ka na ba? No? So over the next few minutes or over the next hour or so, no, we're gonna talk about mental health, but also yung socio-emotional development. No? And later on, I will expound or explain further what that is. So what are our goals? Goals, no? You talk about mga hashtag goals or our objectives for the day. So today, we're going to talk or define we're going to talk about or define what mental health is. Ano ba yung mental health? It always has trended, no? Trending yung mental health, and we do know that over the past years, mas nagiging aware na ang mga tao. This might not be the first time you've heard about mental health. So iintindihin natin kung ano ba yung mental health. Then we're gonna talk about like ano ba yung mental health in the context of adolescent development. So I'm seeing that some of you here are still children, no, nasa middle to later childhood age, no, mga I'm wondering, no, if you wanna type in the chat, can you type how your age, no? Meron bang mga 9-year-old dito, 10? Or ang audience ba natin mga 11-year-old or 12? If you feel like typing your age, that will be helpful for me as well. Okay. And lastly, we're going to highlight the role of prevention, promotion, early detection, and treatment. So as a disclaimer, the views presented here are mine alone and do not necessarily reflect that of my affiliations, including my company. Okay? Ayan. Oh, this is a very participative group. Maraming salamat, no? Okay. Oh, so we have, ang na-notice ko, no? 11, so mga 10 to 13 ang age range natin. Sige, so sakto ang lecture natin, okay? So, how are you feeling today? No? If you feel comfortable, no, you can type it in the chat. Ano ba yung emotion nyo ngayon or feeling, no? If you're not comfortable typing it, that's okay too. Isipin nyo lang siya. No? So usually when we talk about feelings, sila yung mga one words, diba? Like, are you sad? Are you happy? Are you excited? No? Are you bored? No? Or sometimes, minsan, ang feelings ngayon, dinedepict na ng emoji, diba? Oo. Okay, sige. So I'm just looking at, I'll read some response. Sleepy because it's early, no, on a Saturday and tired. Oo. Okay, a lot of you are feeling tired. Fine and tired, sleepy. Okay. Sige, so thank you for responding, no? Okay, next naman. So for those who said na they're okay, no? Sometimes we need to ask again, no? After asking how are you? No, really. How are you really feeling today? And why do I pose this second question? Kasi 'di ba, sometimes people pag kamusta, no? Kamusta ka? Okay lang. Steady, no? Pareho pa rin, 'di ba? Or I'm fine. But sometimes it takes doubly asking kung kamusta ba talaga ang tao for us to really reflect, how am I doing right now, no? Sometimes, no, and this is just for children or teens, sometimes adults, no, kailangan i-ask or mag-inquire sa sarili, kamusta ka na ba? Before we really become mindfully aware kung kamusta na ba tayo. And it's really important to check in on ourselves. Okay, sige. So what type of feeling can you identify with? No, maybe happy, excited, wala dito. So thank you for sharing how you feel tired and sleepy. No, physical sensations are all, or physical feelings are also part of our feelings. Pero ito yung mga emotions, no, and there are many other emotions. And I think at this age, this is the time in your life where you're noticing na pwede pala ang mixed feelings, no? Pwede palang maging both happy and sad, pwede palang maging excited pero also worried, no? Pwedeng combination. So just like the weather, no? Just like our weather or yung panahon, di ba? Emotions or our feelings can change from time to time. Okay. Diba? And why is that so? Bakit pa bago-bago ang feelings? You might be familiar na sometimes you will, or you often you will feel things, tas pag i-reflect mo, saan ba nanggagaling yung feelings? Meron siyang kinalaman dun sa situation, ibig sabihin sa mga pangyayari sa paligid natin. Diba? But really, it's not just the feelings that are a reaction to the situation or what is happening around us. Kasi if that were so, then ibig sabihin lahat ng tao na may pare-parehong experience ay sakto ang nararamdaman. But really, that's not always the case, diba? Kasi how we feel, our emotions are largely rooted on the way we think about a situation. Kung ano yung thoughts natin about a situation. So kung magre-reflect kayo minsan, no, yung how you feel, pag kunyari nag-switch ang emotion nyo, or may naramdaman kayo, whether it's that you feel happy, or may times that you feel scared, or maybe nervous, or maybe stressed out, diba? If you try to reflect, ano ba yung nangyayari, no? Okay, so kunyari, ay kasi meron akong test, meron akong project na isa-submit, no? Or ay naku kasi exam week na, no? Or ay kasi may mga evaluation na magaganap, diba? So that's the situation. But in between the feeling and the situation or yung pangyayari is the thought. And thoughts are actually opinions. Pero ganun ka-powerful ang thought na pag naisip mo siya, no, yung thought o kaisipan or thinking, we really believe them to be true. So if you have, for example, a negative thought, then that will translate to a negative emotion. But if you are able to think about a situation in a calm way, in a balanced way, balanced meaning tinitignan, okay, sige, ito yung mga nagsasabing pwedeng hindi maganda yung mangyayari, pero pwede rin namang likely maayos yung mangyayari. If we're able to really see the bigger picture, then doon natin mas mababalanse ang feelings natin. Okay. So why do we talk about feelings? Kala ko ba ang topic mental health? Well, because mental health includes our emotional state o yung feelings natin. Our psychological state, which is composed of many things, including how we think, no, how we cope with stress, how we respond, no, and our social well-being, yung pakikitungo natin, how we interact, not just with our friends or your friends, but also with every person, interaction with parents, interaction with teachers, no? And mental health affects how we think, feel, and act. So all connected siya, no? Okay. All right. So ano pa ang masasabi natin about mental health? Well, it is a state of well-being, no? So ibig sabihin, 'di ba, when we talk about health, tanggalin muna natin yung word na mental. Let's focus on health. 'Di ba? Para maging healthy, hindi lang naman ibig sabihin wala kang sakit, 'di ba? Being healthy also means na meron kang mga positive habits na nakakapagpa-feel ka na you are okay, you are doing well, 'di ba? So it's not just the absence of disease or illness, hindi lang siya kawalan ng sakit, kundi presence of a state of well-being. Okay? And ang maganda pang matutunan natin about mental health is hindi lang siya about feelings, no? Hindi lang siya about thoughts, no? Part of mental health is realizing your own abilities. So, at this age, particularly this age of 10 to 12 years old, 10 to 13 years old, later on, you will see ito yung stage na you are learning more about your sense of self, no? Mas nakikilala niyo yung sarili niyo, no? Ano ba yung mga hilig ko? What do I like? What do I dislike? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So later on, I will be talking more about that. But also, it's not just recognizing your abilities, but also mental health involves how you cope with stress, no? So something I'd like to emphasize is stress is not really bad, no? Okay, but ganon, di ba pag stress ka, parang you feel not okay. So stress actually is something that motivates us to function, di ba? Kasi kung zero stress at palagi tayong chill all the time, hihiga na lang tayo, di ba? Higa na lang tayo, wala na tayong kailangan gawin. But the right amount of stress or the right amount of ability to cope with stress will really bring us to our optimal state. Ibig sabihin, okay tayo, di ba? Now, kailan nagiging negative ang stress? Yun yung tinatawag na distress, no? Distress. Okay, so ano ba yung meaning ng distress? So type natin dito. Yung maganda dito sa Zoom, no? O distress, pwede tayo mag-type. Okay, yan yung kapag na-overwhelm or masyadong mataas yung stress in comparison to our ability to cope. Masyado nang mabigat. So what do we do? Do we run away from responsibilities or tasks? Well, that may be that sometimes I know that there is a tendency to do that, but also my way to create balance by increasing or improving our coping strategies. Ibig sabihin, palalakasin natin yung kapasidad natin magdala o magkargo ng stress para mag-balance at para you will feel better, or you will be at a state of well-being. Okay. Diba? So what else do we need to know about mental health? Part of it also is, so napag-usapan na natin yung abilities, handling stress, part din nun yung pag-relate with others, no? So it includes how we relate with others, yung interaction, no? Yung how we relate with our friends, ano yung pattern of interaction natin, no? Na healthy ba ang relationship natin with our peers, parents, other adults like teachers, guidance counselors. Okay. And ultimately, when, of course, no, we're putting work here, but really life is a balance of work and play. And that's not just for children, even for adults, no, the balance is important. While it's good to be productive, it's important to balance our lives para sustainable. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Kasi kung puro work, study tayo ng walang break, no? Hindi man lang tayo mag-take ng breaks to breathe, to refocus, to recenter ourselves, to take care of our needs, from physical needs to emotional and psychological or mental needs, mababurn out tayo. No? So important yung works productively, pero i-balance natin yan. No? And mental health also involves our ability to make choices, no? Yung mag-discern, mag-decide. Okay? And lastly, syempre, we don't exist in a bubble. No? We are all interconnected. Diba? As human beings, we are social beings. And that means that we are connected to our community. Now, mental health is important at every stage of life. I'm very happy your Olongapo Medical Society is organizing this not yet a conversation, no, but this talk for the youth. Kasi mental health is not just for adults. We all have mental health, no, from childhood to adolescence, where it is largely influenced by the stage we are in. So clear muna natin yung drawings, and let's move forward. Okay, so I will share with you a video. Okay? Yan. I know that some of you, hindi pa naman ako teenager, but it's good to know kung ano ba yung puberty na yan, ano ba yung adolescence na yan, no? Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng pagiging teen. Okay, so I'll play this short video and then let's listen together.
Between childhood and adulthood, our hormones kickstart a phase of significant change. And while the physical changes of adolescence may be obvious, Less visible are changes that these hormones trigger in our brains, which might just be responsible for turning our teenage years into a bit of a roller coaster. Throughout our lives, our brains undergo a process called neural pruning. The synapses through which our neurons communicate are either lost or strengthened, depending on how much we use them. Well-used synapses grow strong, while the weaker ones fade away. It's this process that makes us capable of faster, clearer, and more complex thought as we grow up. But, crucially, pruning happens at different rates in different areas of the brain. By the time we're adolescents, the neural networks that communicate emotion, risk and reward are well developed, while others, which may help us to plan, prioritise, think logically and moderate our social behaviour, are yet to mature. So, a potential mismatch between our emotion and our judgment arises just as our emotional and social worlds are becoming more complex, making an increase in social anxiety quite normal at this time. Researchers at the University of Oxford want to know how this might affect our behaviour as we progress through our teenage years. In a recent study, they focused on the social worries many of us feel as adolescents. When presented with photographs of ambiguous social scenes and asked to imagine themselves in the picture, anxious younger teens were more likely than others to perceive negativity. But while these heightened emotions and the struggle to control them can make adolescence a difficult time for some, it's also a golden time for learning and growth. The adolescent brain is particularly agile and flexible, and as such, it's especially open to new opportunities, new technologies, and new experiences. So while our teenage years may feel pretty weird, they're also pretty wonderful. To explore how your brain develops, visit www.oxfordsparks.ox.ac.uk and tell us what you think on our Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, diba? So, okay, ano ba yung message, no? And I'm glad that this is a combination of adults and also youth, no? But highlight muna natin kung ano ba yung message sa youth. Particularly yung age group yun na nasa 10 kayo to 13. So when you reach, as you hit puberty, no, siguro from now pa lang napapansin niyo may mga changes na sa body ninyo, no? Siguro napapansin din niyo na parang bakit mas nagke-care na kayo about what other people think, particularly your friends, diba? Well, ang daming changes na nagaganap sa brain. At manonotice niyo siguro bakit ganito. And siguro for the parents and the teachers in the room, bakit ganon? May parang biglang moody, okay lang ba yung anak ko? Well, because of those changes in the system of the child, not transitioning to adolescence, ay nagkakaroon of course ng changes in the brain. It's fascinating to know na actually hanggang 25 years old, no, nagde-develop pa yung front part o yung command center ng brain, yung thinking brain, so to speak, no, parang to simplify. At this age, mas predominant yung emotional part. So sometimes, kahit na you know better, no, sometimes siguro you're thinking, bakit kaya ako ganun nag-react? I know better naman. Well, that is because at this stage, hindi pa nakaka-play catch up yung thinking part dun sa emotional part ng brain. So paano na? Hayaan na lang ba natin ganoon or do we stop there? Well, kaya natin presenta yung video na yon is important to know where we are, know where you are, so that we know kung ano yung kailangan natin gawin to help support you. And really, adolescence, while it may have its challenges, has a great window. It's a window of opportunity. Kung napansin niyo sa video, no, very flexible ang minds niyo. And that flexibility, no, important na partner natin ng mga bagay that will support your positive growth. Okay. So, I know that in school, they really help you with your academic and development, diba? But I'd like to focus today on emotional and personality development. Okay? So, in middle to late childhood, I think yung mga nasa 10 years old, 11, no, sakto tong age for you. Ito yung time that you grow into self-understanding, no? Focus on the word understanding o pag-unawa ninyo sa sarili ninyo. And the interesting thing about this age is you learn more about yourself, not just with physical characteristics, but also you're learning to describe yourself in terms of psychological or abstract terms. No? Do you identify yourself as hardworking? Do you identify yourself as funny? No? Do you identify yourself as smart? No? Do you identify yourself as kind, mabait? No? So we're learning more descriptors and you're able to connect that with yourself. It also involves social characteristics, including comparing yourself to others. Siguro mapapansin niyo ito yung time na parang nakukompare niyo yung sarili niyo na, ay, compared sa friend ko, ganito ako. Siya mas ganito, ako mas ganito. No? Okay. Okay, next is, ito yung time in your life that you're also improving in your ability to understand others. Siguro kung may mga mas bata kayong kapatid, mapapansin nyo bakit focused lang sila sa sarili nila. Well, kasi hindi pa nagde-develop yung mental capacity na yon. But at this age, you are growing into your ability to take perspectives. O siguro kung baka nag-discuss niyo sa school, yung putting yourself in another person's shoes or social thinking. Meaning, nade-delineate ninyo or nasi-separate ninyo na pwedeng ito yung kaisipan ko, pero pwedeng iba yung kaisipan ng iba. Diba? Siguro, ano kaya yung iniisip niya? It's not necessarily the same. Okay? And our ability to take the perspective of others, no, allows us to understand them better. No? They say na pag as we grow into our ability to think socially or to have perspective taking, mas mag-i-improve ang pro-social behavior kasi narunong tayong makiramdam. No? Okay, natututo tayo maging compassionate also through perspective taking. Okay, now, ano naman yung tinatawag na self-esteem and self-concept? At your age, ito yung time din na parang well, self-esteem is continuously growing across the lifespan naman. Hindi lang itong period ng age na nasaan kayo ngayon. Pero important natin i-discuss yung self-esteem sa panahon ngayon or sa age that you are in. So when you talk about self-esteem, ito yung kabuuang evaluation of yourself. No? That includes your self-worth or image. Do you see yourself as good? Or sometimes, do you see yourself as I am not good? Maybe I am not enough. No? Okay. And pag self-concept naman, no, yung konsepto, it is domain specific. Ibig sabihin, ano ba ang assessment mo sa sarili mo when it comes to academics? I'm an average student, or I'm having somewhat of a problem in school, or parang are you
Dr. Rakit, we seem to have lost you. Standby lang kids ha, baka nagkakaroon lang ng technical.
and how you feel about yourself now is largely influenced by how I think I dropped out of the call. Sorry about that. No? Okay, where did if I may ask, no, saan tayo nag-stop?
Self-esteem and self-concept, Dr. Rakit.
Okay, thank you. Sige. Okay, no? So, ibig sabihin, how you feel about yourself, no? Do you see yourself as a good child, no? Do you feel happy about yourself? Or sometimes, do you feel sad about yourself? Malaki yung impact or influence ng relationship nyo with your parents. Okay, even yung relationship nyo nung maliliit pa kayo o mas maliliit pa kayo. And what does that say? So, ibig sabihin, tapos na ba? Parang wala na tayong magagawa if you find, sa pag-reflect nyo ngayon ay hindi ganun kaganda yung self-esteem nyo. Well, life goes on, meaning we can still improve and grow. No? We have to keep a growth mindset. Pwede pang mag-grow into betterment ang relationships towards our own selves or your own selves and towards your relationships with other people. Okay? Now, sometimes self-esteem reflects perception that do not always match reality. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Siguro for some, baka nakaka-relate kayo dito. Sabi nila, magaling naman ako. Sabi nila, mabait ako. Pero when they say good things about me, parang I don't believe it. No? Parang hindi eh. Kasi parang some children or some teens think lowly about themselves. Kahit prinipray sila ng ibang tao, parang hindi totoo. Meron naman no, the opposite na sometimes parang hindi balanse and we think highly of ourselves and hindi natin napakikinggan yung mga comments ng ibang tao. Nagiging grandiose or masyadong mataas ang tingin sa sarili. So either side of the spectrum na hindi balanced, of course, is not ideal. No? Our goal is to have a more balanced sense of self-esteem. Okay. So what are the consequences of low self-esteem? Bakit ba natin ito pinag-uusapan in our conversation or our talk in mental health? Well, really, so low self-esteem can make one vulnerable, no, to feelings of depression or anxiety, even weight changes, no, or parang unintentional weight gain maybe, or even weight loss, no, yung body image issues. But there are, of course, strategies to improve on self-esteem and our self-accept. Okay. Next is self-efficacy. Ano namang ibig sabihin nitong word na to, no? I-break down natin. Might be new to you, no? So, effect, no? Yung root word niyan, diba sa school, effect, ibig sabihin cause and effect. Kung ano yung ginagawa mo at yung outcomes o yung mangyayari. So it is as at this stage, no, particularly while you are in school, ito yung time that you're learning how to face challenges, not just in school, but even at home, no, growing into a greater sense of responsibility and believing in yourself, kaya ko pala. Kunyari, kinakabahan ka, naku, hindi ko yan kaya. Pero when you try it, when you're encouraged by supportive adults, ma-realize mo, kaya ko pala. And that improves your self-efficacy, and self-efficacy contributes to your self-esteem. Diba? You feel good about yourself when you're able to get the answer, or when you're praised or validated or appreciated for your efforts. So it's kind of like the opposite of helplessness. Pag helplessness, naku, hindi ko yan kaya. Self-efficacy is believing that you can, no? Okay, so nag-i-improve yung sa stage na to. Okay. I want to take some time to talk about self-regulation. No? So another term, namin namang term ni Doktora. So let's not focus on the terms, but the meaning of the terms. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng regulation? Well, ngayon mas digital na tayo siguro with your smartphones. But siguro kung nakakakita kayo ng volume na dial, no, yung that round thing, no, pag turn the volume on, or siguro kapag electric fan na lang, 'di ba? 1, 2, 3, ganyan, 'di ba? Or yung pag-adjust ng dial, no, katulad ng nasa picture diyan sa harapan ninyo. So self-regulation is not suppressing emotions, hindi natin tinatakpan o tinataklob yung emotion, but yung ability natin to adjust the volume, no? And hindi siya yung tipong automatic, no? Lalo na 'di ba nakita niyo sa video, and maybe you are feeling sometimes intense ang feelings, 'di ba? So this is the stage in your life na you are growing into your ability to self-regulate, no? Ito yung ability niyo to manage one's behavior, feelings, and thoughts para towards improved social relationships and achievement. Okay. This is what we call a feelings or emotion thermometer. So mapapansin nyo, siguro sa school kung nakakita, or sa bahay, no, pag nakakita kayo ng thermometer, digital. Pero once upon a time, may thermometer na ganyan. Siguro the adults in the room are still familiar. Or siguro if you have science class na gumagamit ng thermometer. So kapag mababa pa yung temperature, nasa green zone pa tayo. Habang tumataas, yellow, hanggang orange to red. No, ito yung version natin ng feelings thermometer. And mapapansin nyo, when nandun na tayo sa orange zone or red zone, siguro yan yung time na sobrang distressed na tayo. We're not okay na. Diba? So, ito yung time na parang kahit alam mo naman what to do, parang bakit iba yung ginagawa, no? Iba yung actions. That's because kapag na-overwhelm tayo o pag umaapaw yung emotions, kahit sino, kahit bata, matanda, any age, any gender, no, ay hindi na kasing clear ang kaisipan. So really, it's important to catch ourselves when maybe we're still in the yellow zone, no? And do frequent mood checks, no? Kaya tayo nagsasabing check in on you. I'm not feeling okay. What am I feeling right now? Try to put a word to your feeling. No? Am I feeling hungry? No? Am I feeling sleepy? Okay, yun yung mga physical o bodily feelings. What about emotions? Am I feeling okay? O pag not okay, ano ba ito? Am I sad? Am I angry? No? Am I irritated? Am I annoyed? Am I sad? Am I afraid? No? Okay. And then as you check in on your feelings, it's helpful to also see na, why am I feeling this way? Where is this coming from? Okay. Okay, so part of self-regulation is being able, being able to breathe in and breathe out or to relax. Yan yung isang way na from, kung kunyari nahuli mo yung sarili mo na nasa orange zone ka na, teka, kakalma muna tayo. Take slow, deep, relaxing breaths, no? Or listen to, well, if you want, no, while listening to music that helps relaxes you. Para makabalik tayo sa zone na mas nakakapag-isip. Okay, yan. So there are a lot of developmental stages as changes in where you are right now. Hindi lang body, but even in your mind. Okay. And, okay, part of those changes is growing into your ability to cope with stress. Diba? So at this age, no, as of course, you're not alone, no, with supportive adults around you, you're able to more accurately appraise a stressful situation. Ibig sabihin, tinatansya nyo or ina-assess niyo. Dinedetermine nyo how much control do you have over it. Mapapansin nyo siguro yung mga times na high ang stress niyo, maybe ang focus ay napupunta sa mga things that you cannot control. Diba? Kaya nagiging stressful. Things like what people think about you, diba? Siguro if we focus on ano bang iniisip kaya ng classmates ko sa akin, well, we're not really in charge or in control of what other people think about us, and that may be distressing. But it's helpful to focus on the things we can control, meaning the things we are in charge of or can be responsible for, our own thoughts or interpretations, our feelings, and our actions. By focusing on the things we can control, then we will grow into better self-efficacy, di ba? Parang, ay, kaya ko pala. Kahit pala may mga stressful things na hindi ko makontrol sa paligid ko, kunwari itong pandemic, di ba? Itong COVID, di ba? Itong having to stay at home. What can I do given the circumstances or the things I cannot control? By focusing on the power that you can exercise within yourself, no? Doon mo makikita na, ay, may options pala, hindi pala ito dead end, hindi pala ako stuck, no? And kaya ko pinag-usapan yung breathe in, breathe out. It really helps na check mo muna how you're feeling. When you feel stuck, breathe in, breathe out muna, no? And then try to find solutions, no? Of course, again, with the guide, it helps to be with guidance from adults, no? Yung tinatawag na social-emotional coaching, okay? At this stage also, you grow into generating more coping alternatives, mga strategies. And hopefully, these coping strategies o yung pagkaya sa stress or pag-handle ng stress ay adaptive. Ibig sabihin, hindi harmful. Ayan. At this stage also, you are growing, no? You are growing into your capacity. Diba, sometimes pag stressed, relax muna, mag-play muna ako ng game saglit bago ko ituloy yung homework ko. Paalam ko muna kay mama. Or siguro, mag-take a bath muna ako para ma-relax ako ng konti. Or siguro, nakipagkwentuhan muna ako with a friend, no? Pag masyado ng intense. Sometimes shifting attention muna helps reduce the stress bago natin i-revisit yung challenge with a more positive and calm mind. Okay. It's also helpful to be able to reframe or to adjust the way we think about a situation, no? From negative thoughts to more accommodating, balanced thoughts. Okay. So these are some example of unhelpful thinking styles. So, maybe some of you, or maybe sometimes there are thoughts like this, no? And These unhelpful thinking styles, kaya ko to present, notice how these automatic thoughts, no, hindi naman natin iniisip, nagpa-pop up sometimes, ay nakaka-affect sa mood. Example, all or none thinking. Naku, if I don't perfect the test, ibig sabihin failure na ako. That's not necessarily true, di ba? When we have a calm mind, we realize na not everything naman is a failure. Actually, I have good traits about myself. You have good traits about yourself. Diba? You're able to do good things too. And everything isn't, you are not a summation of what you do in school. No, there is more to you. There is value to who you are. Okay? Or overgeneralizing. Ibig sabihin, naku, dati, hindi naging maganda yung encounter ko or hindi naging maganda yung relationship ko sa friend ko na to or sa classmate ko. So siguro palaging ganun na lang. Nothing good ever happens. When we're able to calm ourselves down and think of other ways of doing things, you will realize that that is not necessarily true. So there are many other types of unhelpful thinking style, no? And it's important to be able to reframe the negative thoughts. So after you're able to relax yourself, to calm down, no, you can ask yourself na, okay, I had this thought. It's not really helpful because it's making me feel bad, no? Then you ask yourself, what's another way of looking at this? And I think this is a question that actually parents can also scaffold or help their children with, or teachers, diba? Not really to spoon feed them the answers already or give premature reassurances or give the answers to them, because if we do things for the children, then they won't grow into self-efficacy. Pero breaking the steps down for them and walking through these steps with them, okay, reframing negative thoughts, no? Maybe at this stage also, no, ito yung stage that you're trying to figure out who you are. Yan ang isa sa mga, I think, that's one of the things that you will accomplish as you grow into a teenager, no? You're going to get to know yourself better. You will have questions like, who am I? What am I about that? No? What are the things that define me? Okay. And of course, identity is still growing and still flexible. Okay. At this stage, no, as you grow into identity, it's important to balance the way you see yourself with your positive traits, with the things that you see as challenges or weaknesses, what you like, what you don't like. No? In this stage, you're learning to see na, okay, this is how mommy or daddy sees me or my parents sees me. How do I see myself? Diba? So this is you growing into an individual. So of course, continuous journey to into growing into understanding who you are. No? A lot of fancy terms here, but I just want you to focus that event on these two terms, no? Yung exploration. At this stage, you will try things, no? And actually, adolescence or teenage years, ito yung time na you feel like taking more risks, maybe. Diba? But in taking those risks, it's important na the risks you take are those that are not really damaging or harmful to you. Risks that are not for your age, diba? So what risks are this? Siguro it could, sometimes at this age, you will feel it is a risk to try out for something, no? To take a leadership role maybe. Or maybe it's a risk to reach out to a friend, diba? Maybe it's a risk to tell your parents, Ma, this is how I feel. Pa, this is how I feel. And part of identity building is yung commitment. Okay, ito ako. This is how I feel right now. But remember that this is not static. Hindi ibig sabihin pag natiisip mo ito ka na forever, diba? You are growing into getting to know yourself. Eventually, you will reach a stage, hopefully, no? This is towards the later years of your adolescence, na it becomes a clearer picture to you, who you are, what is meaningful to you, no? Okay, sige. So, in later childhood, this is mostly where you are, yung mga 10, 11, and early adolescence, yung mga nasa 13 na natin. Ito yung mga things that you are working towards, so yung industry or learning, growing into competence, no, yung self-efficacy. I can do this, believing in yourself, knowing that you are enough, no? And yung early adolescence, ito yung getting to know yourself, di ba? A lot of the times, ay, ito yung ginagawa ng friend ko, siguro gagayahin ko rin. So I know that there is a natural tendency for that. It's good to identify and see, no? See na, do I like this? Are these the values I want for myself? No, ito yung time of figuring out what is meaningful to you, what are the things you want to keep or maintain, and what are the things you want to not apply to yourself. Okay. Okay, so I'll play, taking a break, no, I'll play this short. So parang ang dami namang challenges nitong stage na to. But again, let's reframe our thoughts na it's actually not, it's not, if we think about it, it's a beautiful time in your life. It can be a beautiful or a beautiful window of opportunity where your mind is still growing.
We used to think the shaping of brain wiring systems tapered off after early childhood. But neuroscience tells us the brain goes through another rapid phase of change from age 9 to 14, a second window of opportunity. Early adolescence is a crucial period for brain development where many challenges begin to emerge. It is also a time of opportunity when rapid changes can be harnessed to set adolescents on a positive path. Puberty initiates intense hormonal changes when the brain is forming better and faster connections between systems, improving the ability to make decisions, solve problems, understand consequences, and to gain more control over emotions and behavior. At the same time, the adolescent brain goes through a period of greater sensitivity to social evaluation and emotional reactions. Increased sensation seeking, interest in social relationships, and exploration of identity all begin to emerge. Early adolescence brings on broadening experiences, acquisition of new skills, and formation of social networks that will have lasting impacts for the rest of a young person's life. To learn more, download the new publication, The
So it's important to choose your exposures, and it's important to choose your exposures. It's important to na to decide, not to discern, and that's the role also of the adults around you. No, you know, I would tell parents also na, and even the youth, no, magagaling ang mga bata, diba? You're able, you know more things than adults. Some adults do, or most adults do, kasi you have the internet with you. But it's really important to stick to trusted adults who you know will be able to guide you. Because there are a lot of things in the media. And sometimes, many times, these things are not always developmentally appropriate for you. And that's when it becomes overwhelming. So it's important na meron kayong trusted adult to guide you and to help you understand or put into context the things you consume. And remember that you have a choice. You have a choice kung saan mo i-expose ang sarili mo. What you will follow or unfollow, di ba, pag sa social media. And even in the physical world, di ba, what you expose yourself to. Okay. So, going back to mental health, it's a crucial period, but it's a period with a good window of opportunity. And what you can do, no, is parang trying to create healthy habits also, no, that will be helpful for your mind. So I know that sometimes it's hard to sleep early. Masarap magpuyat, for some siguro to play, maybe to watch videos, diba? That's understandable. But really having healthy, regular sleep patterns na sumasabay tayo sa sunrise and sunset ay nakakatulong towards mental health. If irregular ang sleep patterns natin, it can really affect our mood and even manifest as feelings of depression. It's important to have physical movement. It doesn't have to be like talagang workout if you're not into that thing. But movement is important, no? And sometimes you're not able to integrate that, lalo na kung distance learning or nasa bahay, di ba? So important na may movement, no? To increase circulation, to feel good about yourself, para mas better ang energy mo rin, no? This is the time that you learn how to cope, to problem solve, and improve in interpersonal skills, no? With guidance, of course, no? and learning to manage your emotions, no? Coping strategies. Now, as mentioned, no, important, you are not alone. You do not exist in a solo bubble. You know, you're with your, there may be, hopefully you might not have all these supportive environments. I know people, many people have different circumstances, but it's important to identify, you know, if there are limitations to your supportive environments, it's important to find pillars that will support you, whether that's in the home or at school or elsewhere in the community. No? Multiple factors affect mental health. And as mentioned, no, you have to choose the things you expose yourself to. Okay? And it's not about, for the adults in the room, it's not about covering them up, no, or cloistering them and protecting them from the world. Otherwise, they will not grow to be self-confident and self-efficacious individuals. But it's guiding them, no, guiding them, assisting them, having constant communication and feedback. Now, we do recognize that with the challenges of the adolescence period, no, ito yung time, actually, did you know na half of the mental health conditions globally, they start to arise at the age of 14. Kasi yun yung challenges ng adolescence. So it's important to double down on support. No? Okay. So I know that some of you like to read, no? Like to type in Google, no? And sometimes, diba, maybe if I feel this way, meron na akong this diagnosis, that diagnosis. But of course, that may be true. No? It may be that you're not feeling okay, but we want to say that poor mental health is not equal or does not really mean mental illness all the time. Such that when we're not able to take care of our needs, we may have poor mental health or not feel okay. Okay? And even if, for example, you are going through something, or you have a mental health condition, all is not lost. No, through support systems, through therapy, no, support systems beyond your family and community, but also the health system, you may be able to experience a more positive, positive state. No? It's not a diagnosis, is not the end goal. It's not the end. No? Okay. Okay. So I want to highlight the last few slides. Okay? And the last few slides are about promotion and prevention. We do not wait until nasa red zone na tayo na hindi na okay. So it's important to grow into skills, to check in on yourselves, to talk, to have conversations, to have webinars like this, so that we grow into awareness. Education is very helpful to open our minds, but also not just exposing ourselves to information, but having an open discussion. No? By health promotion and illness prevention, we may be able to grow into a better state of mental health and well-being. Okay. And it's also important in early detection and treatment. No? And so I posted here some of the examples of the rating skills I use when I see youth, or children and adolescents. That if you feel that something might be wrong and you're not sure, it's okay to reach out to someone you trust, maybe a teacher, a parent, a tita, a tito, and to have to so that makamusta ka. Help you understand where you're going. If you're going through something, and maybe if it's important to reach out to a mental health professional. It's okay to reach out. We all need help at some point in our lives. We are not alone. We're not an isolated island. Okay. And that treatment not only includes medications, but also in psychosocial interventions, therapy. Okay. This picture highlights how you as individuals, your makeup, how you are as an individual, yung mga bata in the room, and even the adults in the room. We occur as part of a system, and meaning what happens to the system, what happens in the family, what happens to our institutions, health institutions, religious institutions, social services, the media, the politics, everything affects how we are. And so that we do not leave approaches into individual approaches na parang responsive. Of course, mental health is a responsibility for all. But of course, we have to work on systems that support good mental health. Mahirap kapag individual lang ang approach. Okay? again, I do believe that with communication, open, non-judgmental communication and collaboration, teamwork, making the partnering, like here, I'm glad that your schools are partnering with medical societies, or rather vice versa. The medical societies are also partnering with the schools. I think this is a good sign for your community that there is hope, there is hope, there is light, and that together, we will be all for mental health, and there will be hopefully a path towards mental health for all. Okay? So that is, I believe, my last slide. Thank you for listening. I hope in the middle of the session, nakapag-stretch kayo ng konti. It has been quite a long discussion. I'll stop share. If you have any questions, comments, I'd be glad to accept them. Thank you.
Wow! Thank you very much, Doc Kit, no? Kamustahin ko yung mga kids? Nag-enjoy ba kayo? Marami ba kayong natutunan? Kasi ako, Doc Kit, ang dami ko talagang natutunan sa lecture mo, and sobrang saya ko na nakapakinig ako dito. Kasi ngayon, na-realize ko and talagang natutunan ko sa'yo na ang stress pala ay okay lang. Ang stress ay part ng normal processing. Ibig sabihin, kailangan natin siya sa buhay para talagang malaman natin yung mga strategies, no? Yung tinatawag na coping strategies para lalo tayong matulungan. Ang stress ay makakatulong sa atin kung paano tayo makapag-isip ng ways para matulungan ang sarili natin to handle stress, Doc Kit, no? So, ang galing ng lecture talagang para sa mga, syempre, kids, tayo, yung age natin ngayon, marami tayong nararamdaman na minsan hindi natin maintindihan na bakit ko nararamdaman to, okay lang ba na nararamdaman ko to, or mali ba to? So, natutunan ko din, na important yung paghingi natin ng guidance sa trusted adults, trusted individuals, lalong-lalo na yung parents natin. So, thank you, Dr. Kit. Para sa mga kids, meron ba kayong questions or gustong iklaro kay Doc Kit? Marami ba kayong natutunan or na-enjoy niyo ba yung lecture niya? Naka-relate ba kayo sa mga sinabi ni Doc Kit? Lalo na dun sa mga words, na bago sa atin. May messages dito, no? So, basahin natin. Okay. Sige. So, do you have any questions, kids? Did you learn a lot from the lecture of Doc Kit? No? How about our teachers? I believe there are teachers here. Do you have questions? Okay. Sige. Actually, I hear. Oh, okay. So, thank you, no? Naka-relate naman daw. So, how are you feeling right now? No, kids? You can type your answers in the chat box. I feel like pasta is just spaghetti, right? So, ayan. They feel great. Okay. Feeling positive. Wow. That's good. I feel interested. Good. Happy. Wow. So, thank you for your response. I want to sleep. Thank you for the very informative lecture. A bit tired. Happy. Okay. Actually, Doc Kit, no? Natuwa ako doon sa mga, I really like the terminologies. First time, not first time, but para akong natuwa na there's such thing as self-efficacy. Self-efficacy pala is the parang kabaliktaran ng helplessness. Most of the time, kasi parang feeling natin na hindi ko kaya to, hanggang ganito na lang yung kaya kong gawin, I'm not enough. But there's such thing as self-efficacy where it means na I can do something, I am enough. So you change your way of thinking from negative, no, from helplessness. And self-efficacy is something na pwede mo palit doon sa negative thought.
Mukhang may naka-unmute.
Here, I feel motivated and it gives me ways and options to be productive even in the midst of stress. Thank you, Doc. Wow. Actually, Doc Kit, one of the common problems of the youth right now is the pandemic. So, like you've said, there are ways to cope, especially yung socialization, meet up with friends. However, because of the pandemic, merong limitation sa kitaan, especially kids right now are not yet fully vaccinated. No, there's a certain age where allowable yung vaccination. So, may I know from the kids, what are your other coping strategies if you feel stressful nowadays, especially with online schooling? Can you type in your answers? Yes. So kids nowadays seem to be more virtually inclined. Yes, that's true po, no? Will this have an effect in their social interactions with one another? Will it also affect their adjustment going back to the usual normal? Ayan. I think that's a question, Doc Kit.
Okay, sige. So thank you, Doc Chex. So, siguro before answering that question, I would like to respond to what you said about like the terms like self-efficacy. I really think that it's important that we include in the curriculum of our children, not just academics, but also some social and emotional understanding. It's important to support them in this as well. So my personal thoughts on Dr. Arl's comment and also question is that is it a negative thing to be virtually inclined? For me, at the end of course, we recognize the differences of generations. Diba? The generations are evolving. We are all adapting. And I think that virtual inclination now isn't just for kids, but for adults. Because especially, and it just happened that kids were more digital natives, diba? They were introduced to it earlier, right? But as adults, we realize that this is also something that we need right now. And in a way, actually, virtual allows us to connect. Now, virtual is a tool. It's not really bad or good. It's a neutral thing. It's a matter of how we use it, right? So sometimes when we go virtual, sometimes we would hear hyper connection leads to disconnection. What's an example? If, for example, I'm playing a game, and games aren't necessarily bad. It's a fun thing, diba? It's a thing that might be of interest to the youth or a child. It's a thing that might bring joy or might bring entertainment. But if, for example, as I use my gadget, when people try to talk to me, I would rather isolate and be alone with my gadget. Notice how in hyper connection, there is disconnection or social disconnection. So we must remember how we use our gadgets, how we use our devices, how we use virtual connections to still maintain social connections. At least for the youth I get to talk with, despite them being digital natives, they actually miss face-to-face classes. They miss seeing their peers. And what does that tell us? Despite being born in a digital age, the development or the evolution of the mind still came from the fact that we are social beings. Social connection, however you define it, is important. For some kids, they feel satisfied being able to chat with their friends. For some kids, they use Discord to communicate. For some kids, they would like to be on phone calls. For some kids who are in quarantine right now, they before they wouldn't get along with their siblings. Nakakainis naman yung younger sibling ko, always up in my business. But then they realize, oh, it's fun to be with, they find common things with their siblings or brothers and sisters, and they're able to have social connections that they didn't have pre-pandemic with their parents, other family members. So I think it's important on how the key here is how do we utilize the internet, how do we utilize virtual connections, and how do we make meaningful social connections that satisfy your needs or emotional needs. Thank you, Dr. Chex.
Thank you, Doc Kit. So I think we have questions in the chat box. I will read it for you, Doc Kit, no? So one is, can depression fade away on its own? Is depression due to paranoia?
Thank you for that question. No? I really appreciate that. It's a very important question. So when we talk about depression first, no, we can the depression or the depressed mood can be just a mood. But if we talk about clinical depression, it's not just one single factor of depressed mood. There are other symptoms of what we call clinical depression. No? So that means that it's not just a low mood state. What do we mean by the clinical depression? It means that a person somehow does not feel motivated anymore, or maybe is not interested in the things that they used to like before. No, like a child would tell me before, I enjoyed watching my K-dramas, and I would, I would laugh, I would smile. But then now when I watch it, I don't have energy anymore. I don't feel like watching anymore. It doesn't bring me joy anymore. So the decreased ability to feel pleasure and joy, that's another symptom. Depression, or when we talk about clinical depression, it also affects one's ability to sleep, no? So it can affect, no, it's either hypersomnia, meaning oversleeping, I feel sleepy all the time, or insomnia, no, yung parang I don't feel like sleeping at all. It can affect one's appetite, either no appetite, don't feel like eating, or you overeat, not to cope with stress. And the thing about depression is it's not just a mood state, it also affects one's ability to concentrate. Like parang, and it can translate to poor school performance also, no, poor academic performance because it's hard to concentrate. Part of depression also, diba, what we talked about a while back, our thoughts are connected to our feelings. So many times with people who really experience clinical depression, there are negative thoughts like, I am not loved, they don't like me, I am unlovable, I am a failure. No? So these negative thoughts, no, can also be triggers to excessive feelings of guilt. No, that's one of the symptoms also of depression, like feeling that everything is your fault, or you're taking too much responsibility for things that aren't really solely your own. No, and if it comes to the extreme, no, depression can also involve like thoughts of not wanting to be around anymore and even self-harm. So go back to the question, can it fade away on its own? Well, I think that I think that if there are changes, no, if there are changes either in the self or in the environment that help support a person's emotional state, then siguro it can resolve. Meaning it doesn't have to be na parang when you feel depressed, ay parang kailangan na agad ng mental health professional to treat you. If, for example, you deal with it as a family, no, you try to evaluate like how to address the situation. Yun pala, the parents realize it's how they communicate with the child that is triggering the depression. Then pwede. These are their strategies to improve, to address the depression. However, typically kasi when you reach a point of depression, it means nag-decompensate na. What does that mean? In terms of a season, na imbalance na, right? And that's why usually we need help from people beyond our own circles. And that's why treatment is important. No? Treatment doesn't just mean medications, but therapy. No? Mm-hmm. So and the thing about differentiating pala na differentiating if you just feel low or depressed for the day and if it's clinical depression that needs treatment, the criteria or in understanding clinical depression, one, it lasts for more than 2 weeks. Ibig sabihin, it's not just you feel low for a few, like kunyari, you argued with your sibling and then you feel bad, or your friends had, you and your friends had a falling out and you feel bad, no? That's a natural reaction or a natural emotion to the experience. But if the depressed mood is persistent or pervasive, meaning you feel it across other areas in your life, and it's how you feel for the most part of the day or the weeks, then I think that probably needs more support, no? And you can't just wait for it to pass on, no, or to fade away. Okay. Is depression due to paranoia? I'm afraid I'm not really understanding this question well. Maybe you could further clarify. And as you type a clarificatory statement, no, maybe we could, I could give the stage back to Dr. Chex, no, to respond or for us to address the other questions in the
Yes,
chat. Thank
yes,
you.
okay. Thank you for that very informative answer, Doc Kit, no? One more question is, so I will read it. I deal with it in silence because I'm not gonna waste my time on other people that don't understand, no matter how many times I explain it thoroughly. So I think what he's trying to say is how he deals with a stressful situation. You know? And I think it's just expressing his ways. So let me read another. Yeah, so according to Jacob Manzo, I spend my time playing and spending time with family and loved ones. Wow. So I think that's a good coping mechanism when dealing with a stressful situation. Others, I read, sleep, play, but sometimes I am thinking of myself. Okay, here is another question, Dokit. I'm just curious, why do kids get easily addicted to online stuff like YouTube, games, and other stuff?
Mhm. That's a very smart question. Thank you for that question, Jacob. No? I think that I would answer this in two pronged or two ways. No? First, the vulnerability or the uniqueness of the stage you are in right now. And second, no, this is not all your responsibility, but the external factor. No? How did they make these videos to make us hooked on them? No? So first is the vulnerability, no? As if we look back, no, I'll reference to the video we watched. Our brains are continuously developing, particularly you at this stage, no? If you put your fist this way and your other palm, your hand over the other fist, no, the emotions part of the brain is here, and the thinking part of the brain is here. This part is still developing. And the power of this part is it actually is kind of like the brakes, right? Like when you drive, you hit the brakes. This is the part that is responsible for inhibition. No, ibig sabihin, knowing when to stop, when to shift your attention to another thing. So this part is still developing and catching up. This part is growing faster than this one. So therefore, it's harder to when you're enjoying, it's harder to hit the brakes, diba? Because your mind is still developing. But I also want to show that this isn't entirely just because you are a kid or that you are vulnerable. Notice how over the years there is a call for greater social responsibility upon the networks, diba? The people who make the people who make these apps, who make these games. Why? Because if once upon a time, you probably weren't born yet. When you would go to the internet, when you want to see what's next, you have to actually click the next button. But now you just scroll and it's endless, right? So in our brains, we have this normal chemical or natural chemical called dopamine. Our phones, our gadgets, and the things on it really alter or change how our dopamine works. There is a constant feedback of of enjoyable things. And every time you hit next or you scroll up, no, there is another thing, another thing. There seems to be no end, right? So whenever, since there is no end goal, there is no end to scrolling in the game, diba? There's always an extension, diba? It's not, many games right now don't really have an end goal, but there's always that way to level up, no? It alters how we process, how our dopamine, no, our pleasure chemical works. And that's why it's easier, no, it's easier to, and that's why gaming addiction or internet addiction is something that is more common now. And I would say not just for kids, also for teens and even adults, no? And I think to connect your great, no, your very intelligent question, that is the role now of working together as a family. Now, knowing the vulnerability of this age, that the brain isn't fully developed yet, and knowing how there are things on the internet that are actually promoting more use, diba, more dependence, then we have to create structure and limits, agreeable structure and limits between the parent and the child. Okay, what is a sensible number of hours, no? What is a sensible what is the sensible content? No, it's not just the number of hours, but what is the sensible exposure that is meaningful to you, that is helpful to you, no? Such that we can, no, utilize what we have, the resource we have, which is the online stuff, no, as you said, to our advantage. Thank you for that question, Jacob.
Thank you, Doc Kit. No, I agree with you. No, that we really, especially with the parents, it is really important to guide the kids what they are watching or viewing in the internet, so that we are also aware of the things that they are seeing, so that we can correct or we can guide them in viewing what is right for them. So here's another question, Doc Kit. What are some steps you think our schools could take to improve the students' overall mental state?
Okay, thank you for that question. Um, well, one part that the school can do is the education part, no? Knowing that while it's important to teach the subjects, the more traditional subjects like math, science, English, to have sessions or topics that are focused also on social emotional development as well. I think for me, no, and that's why I took the time to talk about their social emotional development. For many youth that are rapidly changing, it can get confusing. So self-awareness first is helpful, no? To help understanding what you are going through actually dissipates a lot of the anxiety and the confusion. And I think that's helpful. I think also that education is powerful in terms of how we communicate with each other. No, communication isn't just the realm of mental health, but definitely, no, non-stigmatizing, open, non-judgmental communication can foster a better sense of mental state, diba? Um, Culturally, sometimes we might respond to people in a negative way. So it's important to to destigmatize mental health, asking for help even at this early stage. And I think I think also what schools can do is also not just to take care of the children's mental health, but teachers' mental health. You know, in fairness to the teachers, a lot of the teachers are overworked, underpaid, no? Burn out na rin ng teachers. And I'd like to say that it's hard to give something you do not have. And teachers have a very powerful role. You're kind of like the second parent. Pre-pandemic, children spent more time with you, for the most part, than with their time, diba, is spent in schools, more time in school than at home, diba? And that's why it's important to protect and to preserve the mental health of teachers, because your interactions with your students matter. No? So sometimes, kunyari, I know many teachers don't do this intentionally. Sometimes maybe you are not mindful, you are able to say a stark remark, no, or maybe you raised your voice a bit, not because you meant to direct that to the child, but because you weren't feeling okay. So I think a large part of how children grow is not what we tell them, but what we show them. Diba? The role of modeling. Modeling is so important, diba? From the home to the school. And if we're able, kunyari, to model, if teachers are able to model better emotion regulation, diba? Having a healthy conversation, then children also learn about this. School mental health school programs are, I think, a call right now, no, and even before. So I think it's also important to have school programs so that in terms of peers, no, we do not wait to catch children at the end of the stream na, when they're already seeking consultation from the doctors, so that we have tiers or levels na preventive programs, promotion programs. I think that is a good start, no, a strong start. And if you recognize na parang there is a change in the child's behavior, before judging it or interpreting it, no, it's important to check in on them. Sometimes we interpret their school performance negatively and unjustly, di ba? Parang, ay baka tamad, maybe lazy, di ba? Not paying attention, di ba? But we do not, but you know, a lot of the mental health conditions, particularly depression and anxiety, are internalized. We don't really know what a person can look okay, diba? But when you ask, when you ask with openness and non-judgment, they're not okay pala. So early detection is also important. And once you detect, siguro having a conversation, no, that's the power, that's the role of teachers also, having a conversation with the parents, no, and with teachers conversing with parents. At the end of the day, we are all allies, no. It's not a blame game. It's not, and I hope parents, when teachers approach you, please do not feel offended, because at the end of the day, I think we are all moving towards the same direction, helping our youth. No, this is not about pointing fingers, but being able to humbly ask for help, which all of us need at some point. Yeah, so I think these are some of the strategies from a systemic point of view that we will be able to help our children. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, Dokit. I really agree with you, no, when you said that we should have programs at school regarding mental health because, as you said, our school is our second home. So I really encourage the children to talk with their teachers. No, if they cannot talk with their parents about their emotions or about their problems, they can talk to their teachers because I believe teachers are also are trusted individuals, and it is really important for the school to create mental health program so that the children can be confident in expressing or hindi sila mahihiya, no? To express their emotions. Okay. Thank you for the kids pala, no? Who are typing at the chat box. So thank you, Kirby, Ansel Fu, Raymark, Simon Ibay, and Jeanette Pineda for asking questions. So for the kids, no, you can type any questions that you like.
Ebay
So,
po, ebay po, ebay po.
Ebay. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Remark Simon Ebay. Okay. So another question, Dokit. Is depression due to stress? It's from Remark Ebay.
So thank you for that question, Mark. No? So depression has a lot of factors. Diba? If we connect, diba, stress is part of life, environmental stress is part of life, internal stress is part of life or our existence or our life. Diba? So it's a matter of, so if not just purely, but of course stress, chronic stress or severe stress. So when we say chronic, it could mean that it's not really intense stress, but like a constant exposure to stress can make one vulnerable. No, it doesn't mean automatically you will be depressed, but it can make you vulnerable, prone, no, have a tendency to decompensate. Or It could be that there could be a major triggering stress, maybe a death of a loved one or a loss of something or someone, diba? That could make one vulnerable. But I stress that it is vulnerability, not causality. Meaning, since we all go through stress, it doesn't mean automatically that one will experience depression. It's a balance of factors that make us vulnerable and factors that protect us. So I want to focus this conversation also to strengthening protective factors, meaning protective factors that are part of one's own self and protective factors in the social environment. What are examples of protective factors? One is one's ability to reframe the situation, right? So for example, it was stressful that when the teacher called on me, I was not able to answer. Diba? If we have a negative thought about it, oh, maybe my classmates think I'm stupid. So that's a negative thought, right? You saw it's an unhelpful thinking style. So that negative thought will translate to a negative emotion. Yeah? But a protective factor is learning to reframe and to ask ourselves, no, if ever we have that negative thought, what's another way of viewing this? Maybe my class, no, so we have positive self-talk also, alternative ways of seeing things. So, people make mistakes, diba? All of us make mistakes, and it's not just me who makes mistakes. And the important thing is, if I was not able to answer, I tried, no, but I had difficulty. School is a place for learning. We don't know everything. It's why we are in school. And I have friends also. And the way they treat me, it doesn't seem like they feel badly towards me. So maybe my negative thought of me being made fun at isn't really true. It is just my emotion, no? My emotion that is telling me to think negatively. So maybe if I calm myself down, no, maybe listen to music, do some art, write in my journal, or play with my pet, no, or play with my sibling or parents, maybe that will be helpful for me, no, to so why did I take that path, no, of discussing it? Meaning that just because we experience stress, it doesn't mean you are defenseless. You can raise your protective factors, but know that you are not alone. Part of the protective factor, not just of children and adolescents, but all people, regardless of age, is being surrounded by pillars of support. Diba? So these are protective factors. Growing into a better relationship with families, growing into better relationship with peers, no, peers that help us grow into the people we would like to be in a better state of mental well-being, forming relationships forming relationships that are helpful for us, no, being able to identify the teachers or the guidance counselors that we know are good sources of support, no, and maybe even if needed, diba, reaching out to a mental health professional, connecting to the health system. So that means na I want to stress that stress is part of life. It is a common experience. Chronic stress may make you vulnerable. So the goal is to either have a discussion on how to address that cause for stress, no? Baka naman there is a solution that can be made to remove unnecessary stress, no? And also to build protective factors to limit vulnerability. Thank you.
Yes, Doc. And I think
Mm.
it is also important, no, as you've said earlier, that when we are reframing our negative thoughts, it is important to talk to our parents or to our teachers for them to help us break down the steps, right, Doc Kit, no? So that they will guide us how to think of solutions or coping strategies. So I think that reframing is very important. So here's another question from Kirby and Selfu. regarding depression and other mental illnesses, particularly the effect it has on teenagers. When unchecked, things would very quickly escalate and lead to suicide. Or in the case of the recent Oxford High School mass shooting. So, considering the almost stigma that comes with the modern depression, how do you think we as students could deal with this, and how could the school assist?
Mm-mm.
So I think the question here, Dokit, is as students, no, how can they deal? Because earlier we already the question about the school assistance was already answered.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Okay. So as individuals, I think I will go back, to the goal of like prevention. And what does prevention mean on an individual level? Prevention includes building healthy habits, healthy physical habits, healthy emotional habits. No, so apart from taking care of your sleep, proper nutrition, enough movement, and we also address our psychological or emotional needs. No, so meaning checking in on yourself, how you're feeling. If you're not feeling okay, no, adding pleasurable activities to balance the times when you're not feeling okay. Hopefully, these pleasurable activities are adaptive or non-harmful. No, so meaning if you had a bad day at school, instead of spiraling, no, and really feeling low for a long time, no, trying to see what will help soothe me, what will help soothe me or comfort me at this time. Okay, so self-soothing behavior is actually something you're also developing at this stage. And if that also includes connecting with people that are helpful, I think that is what the things within your control, diba? As we mentioned a while back, understanding the things that are within your control, like the way you think about things, that will translate or affect how you feel about things and how you respond or act. No? So altering behavior, no, is another way of like breaking the cycle of negativity. For example, apart from reframing the thoughts, no, sometimes if we do the same behavior and it leads to the same outcomes, then maybe there is a need to change the strategy. Now, what will be a more helpful way to address this situation? Or sometimes when we're stuck in our own thoughts and feelings, for the kids who find that they are kinder to their friends than they are to themselves, no, sometimes that happens. When it's a friend in need, you're kind to them, but when it's you who is suffering, you're not kind to yourself. It's helpful to ask your friend, if this were my friend, no, how would I advise this friend? No, what will be helpful if this happened to my friend? So these are some of the strategies that can be helpful. Um, uh, okay, I am okay. Stigma, no. So, um, with the youth today, diba, you parang giving balance to what is happening in society. So of course, no, as time passes, people are growing into better education, and maybe not everyone in the while a lot of the older generation are getting more woke, no, there are still people who are playing catch up, and I think that's the role of education, not just education academic wise, but education and learning how to get to know oneself better, improve one's relationship with oneself and with other people too. So I think it's important to have a conversation with adults as well. I know, the interesting thing about teenage years is that this is the age where you try to differentiate yourself from adults. No, and that's natural, no? That's how they think, no, this is how I think, no, and that's natural. But sometimes it's helpful to come before reacting. I know that your reactions usually come from realities, diba? But instead of being stuck in the cycle, it's helpful to practice relaxation techniques, no? maybe like breathing exercises, mindfulness. No, I would share with some of my clients na I'm not a promoter of Netflix, but since it's all around us, no, if you check out Headspace Guide to Meditation, there are a lot of you. So you don't have to enroll naman. There are a lot of free resources, no, relaxation techniques, breathing exercises, guided meditation, no, that will help you calm down first. And maybe timing the conversation. Now, maybe if there's an adult and, for example, your parent is mostly stressed out all the time, finding the timing, ma, dad, can I talk to you? No? Okay, and then having a conversation with them. Sometimes it's even the kids that educate the parents, diba? Because you are more aware. And I hope that if you're able to meet at a space where you are both calm and prepared to listen, that will be an opportunity for growth, and that will be helpful for you as well. So I like that you want to focus also in individual strategies. Definitely finding strategies and helping one's way of thinking, one's way of coping, not engaging in relaxation techniques, shifting attention for a bit if it becomes too overwhelming, no, find understanding how our actions lead to consequences, assessing if these consequences or outcomes are things we want for ourselves will be helpful for you. But at the end of the day, I'd also like to emphasize that you are not alone. No, you are not alone. And I think collaboration is important, meaning we have to engage families, we have to engage schools, no, so that to help each other out, no, have a better state of mental health.
Thank you for that, Dr. I think here's a last question. I'm scrolling down the chat box. So from Remark again, no? What is the difference between depression and mental illness? I believe you mentioned that in your lecture earlier, Dokit, no? It doesn't mean that you feel depressed or lonely. You're already clinically depressed. That's not the case, diba, Dokit? There are parang stages, no? It doesn't mean that if you feel such, you're already clinically or having major depressive disorder. I think there's a difference. So he's asking what's the difference between, I think, clinical depression and poor mental state or mental
Thank you for that question, and Doc Cheska for highlighting, no, what we discussed. So well, mental health, no, diba? And the opposite of it in a way, or poor mental health or mental illness has a big scope. No, it's a very big scope. Meaning depression is just one of the manifestations of poor mental health. And if it becomes a full-blown clinical depression, then it's just one of the many mental illnesses or mental health conditions. So it's part of a and and with mental illness or mental health conditions, it manifests in different ways. Going back, no, to what Dr. Chex shared, yung not poor mental health does not necessarily mean mental illness, and if you do have a mental health condition, it doesn't mean that life will be purely negative. Now, there could be a state of well-being in the middle of a mental health condition, no? But I'd like to share that if you find that there has been a change, that day you were feeling okay and now not so okay. If you're unsure, no, is this just me feeling my feelings? No, is this just a natural emotional reaction, or is this something that I need help with na? If you're not sure, it's okay to ask. We even invite you to ask, diba? Because it's better to catch it early. Now, maybe as you detect that you're not feeling okay, it's important to have the conversation early so that we catch you even before it becomes something that is worse off.
Thank you. I think, Doc Kit, they are getting curious, no? So, dumadaming question. So, I will read one question from Nicole. So, how can we stop or avoid self-harm?
Okay. So, sige. How do you stop or avoid self-harm? So, First of all, siguro before we stop something, diba? Before we stop something or we find solution, we have to understand what it is first, okay? So when we talk about self-harm, it can be in many different ways, diba? Self-harm is done in many different ways. And also, I think what I want to share is that self-harm means different things for different people, no? I've talked to a lot of youth. Sometimes for them, self-harm is something they do to cope with stress. Sometimes self-harm is something they do because they can't feel anymore. They feel numb. Sometimes it's something they do because it's so painful here. So rather than feel the pain here, put the pain elsewhere. And sometimes self-harm can be at the extreme of actually need something that is connected to suicide. No? So how do we address, no, instead of saying stop? Because and I want to talk about how we address it and not just stop. Because if we take the behavioral approach, no, and not just do it, diba? If it were that easy, then people will just stop doing it, diba? And it won't happen anymore. It's a matter of taking a step back and understanding from what context is this health harm happening. Is this child, is this adolescent, is this adult, or this person undergoing depression, undergoing anxiety? No, what are the factors that have led this person to this behavior? Maybe maybe also it will be helpful to divert, no, while hindi pa fully resolved ang depression or whatever mental health state the person is in. We can redirect, no, the adaptation or the adaptation to stress in a more helpful way. No? Ibig sabihin, if that's how the person copes with stress, learning and molding and forging other ways of adapting with stress. Diba? So like, what are the things that actually make you feel good also, that are not cutting or doing self-harm, diba? What is it? Connecting with friends, connecting with your pet, playing a game, drawing, playing music, diba? Maybe it's important to also learn some new tactics, breathing exercises, diba? So that by diverting it, then you won't, instead of just stopping something, because if you just stop something, there will be that void. But if you stop the self-harm, we take a step back. What is triggering the self-harm? And then there's that feeling that, okay, so what am I gonna do now? How do I cope with stress? So it's building positive coping strategies so that if you feel like it, then you will rather opt for something else. Another thing I think that will be helpful is to catch yourself at the yellow zone. No? If you remember the feelings thermometer, emotion thermometer, when you reach the orange zone or the red zone, it's hard na because the emotions have taken over. So it's important to check in on yourself as a habit, no? Asking when you're not feeling okay, whether it starts as a physical feeling or an emotional feeling or a negative thought, no? And addressing it at an early stage so that it won't reach a point when the emotions have taken over and we end up doing behaviors that are not really helpful.
Yes, I think that's really important, Dokit, no? First, you have to parang talk to yourself, analyze what you are feeling. And then you can also talk to a trusted individual or trusted adult so that before you go to that orange and red zone, it's like the point of no return. Eh. Prevention is really better than going all through that parang irreversible stages, the yellow and the red zone. So it's important that you talk to it with someone or you analyze it with yourself. So there are other questions, Dokit. I will read them. From Ethan Kyler Rojas Infante, is mental illness and anxiety just the same?
So thank you for that question. No? So First of all, our emotions, whether positive or negative, are part of the range of human emotion. Meaning, if you feel scared, afraid, anxious, or worried, it doesn't mean it's already not normal. No. For example, if there is a normal anxiety, no, that means, for example, you have a test, diba? Then you're worried, you're anxious, diba? That's a natural reaction. But when is it something? When does it become something that needs attention? No, needs consultation, needs help, no, needs intervention. When the anxiety becomes longer or more sustained than the stressor. What do I mean by that? For example, oh, teacher will call the teacher will call us the one at a time to recite. I feel anxious. Diba? I feel, I feel anxious. Usually, when you start presenting, as you go on with your presentation, the anxiety dissipates, right? So, and what is anxiety after all? It is an emotional response that is usually linked to our body's physical drive to to cope with the challenge, no? What does that mean? For example, long ago, diba? For example, when people were still chased by wild animals, for example, you're chased by a lion, right? Your heart pounds, you feel worried, you feel afraid, and therefore, what we call the sympathetics, no, our body has to respond. Otherwise, if we're still chill, then the lion will eat us, diba? So, similar, of course, now we're not exposed to lions. Stress is a different animal na, so to speak. Could be stress in school, stress at home. So our body, all our body parts respond to be able to respond to the stress. So it's not necessarily a negative thing. But when it becomes persistent and it's something that is causing you struggle or suffering na, then maybe that is a sign that it has to be checked. No? Kasi parang, what does that mean? That the anxiety doesn't stop, that there's always that baseline anxiety, no, that you're suffering within. Then maybe that one could be a part of it could be part of a mental health condition that will need to be addressed. Thank you for that question.
And I believe, Dokit, no, aside from being persistent, the anxiety is really excessive, no? It's an excessive worriness. Okay. So I will
Oh,
read.
I'll connect with what you said, Doc Cheska. No, sometimes when it becomes excessive, there's what you call the pattern of anxiety avoidance. What does that mean? The anxious avoidance cycle. So when anxiety is too distressing, there are people who would rather withdraw. Diba? Like, I don't want to feel that anymore. But the thing about avoidance is if we hide, we might be hiding ourselves from the thing that is making us feel anxious, but we are also hiding ourselves or closing our doors to other experiences, including positive experiences or things that add meaning or joy in our lives. As a concrete example, for example, you feel anxious about going to school, so you would rather stay home and not attend school. While that may dissipate or remove the anxiety, think about how you are being removed from other opportunities, diba? From things that could make you happy pala and make you grow, like relationship with your friends, learning new things, getting to know yourself better, growing into self-efficacy, building your self-esteem, diba? Realizing that you can. So that's why I think that when, as Dr. Checks mentioned, when it becomes overwhelming or excessive, no, that's the time. I think even before that time, it's important to reach out.
Thank you, Doc Kit. Another question from Raymar, related to anxiety. Does depression mean someone will automatically go suicide or anxiety?
Okay, can you repeat the question?
Does depression mean someone will automatically go suicide?
Okay, so thank you for that question. No? And the short answer is no. No, the short answer is no. And the thing about depression is although there are common symptoms, it presents in different ways. And the reason why it presents in different ways is at the end of the day, we are unique individuals. But I know that I do want to stress first that we have a wide array of age group, no, and that I guess the curiosity about suicide, was sprung by the first question about it, about it being brought up. But I think that's the reason why it's important, why prevention programs are important, health promotion programs or mental health promotion are important, early detection and treatment are important. Why? How is this connected? Because if we catch it early, then it won't reach a stage anymore when it becomes more severe or more serious, such that it's already linked to self-harm or even sadly to suicide. So again, it's not always related. No, I have many clients who do not have suicidal thoughts, but they feel depressed. So it's not always connected. But if it is, then really it is an alarm sign that we really have to consult. We really have to ask for help, not just to, of course, primarily to keep you safe, no, and also to hopefully restore and bring you back to a better state of mental well-being. Because that in itself, no, is a sign that the person is suffering, no, that the person is not okay. But that if ever you know someone who's reached that point, or if you have, for example, reached that point, ask for help. You are not alone. It can be treated. That's what I want. When we talk about mental illness, no, it's not to stigmatize something, but to say that as with any health condition, it is treatable. You don't have to endure it alone. It is treatable. It is manageable. It can be helped. Mm-mm.
Okay, I think they are discussing, Doc Kit, no, in the chat box about suicide, the differences between suicide, murder, and homicide. I believe homicide is the killing of one person by another, while murder is the homicide, that is the illegal killing of another person. And I think suicide is you, no? You're doing the harm or the killing to yourself. So the
I want to like interject if I may, no.
yes,
For
doctor.
some of you here, again, this is a wide audience of youth and even adults, and youth of different ages and youth of different exposure. I am pretty sure that some of you, this is not the first time you've heard some of these thoughts, but by the way the chat is going, it sounds to me that some of you are new to the terminology. And I guess no, in anticipation, parents might be worried, oh no, my child is exposed, no. I think the important thing is to have a conversation with your children, diba? Because one way or another, whether through their peers or friends or through social media or even traditional media, they may be exposed. So it's important to have a conversation. Studies show that if you talk about it with your children when it comes up, it doesn't mean that you are planting the thought in their head. If they are thinking about it, you ask them to explore. Why are they thinking about it? Is it just out of curiosity to learn it as a subject matter? Or is it that they feel that it is relatable? No? So again, it's important to have a conversation with your children. Okay, to accommodate their thoughts. And if you feel, for the adults in the room, if you feel that it is too challenging for you to talk about it, then you may refer to someone who is able to handle that conversation. Maybe the school guidance counselor, or maybe a teacher who is well informed in mental health, a doctor. No, it doesn't even have to be a psychiatrist already, or a psychologist. It could be the pediatrician. No, pediatricians more and more are growing in their capacity to be, they're the first line doctors of children after all. So if you're unsure, no, talk to them.
I
So,
agree, Doc Kit.
and I want to highlight, no, kids, no, the kids in the room. as we talk about these things, no, I'm glad you are curious. But I think rather than focusing on the illness, rather than focusing on the negative manifestation, on poor health, if we focus on that, no, then we might get lost. At the end of the day, it's important to refocus on the promotional strategies, on protective factors.
Yes. Oo. And
Mm.
of course, no, I think they are getting curious, but Doc Kit is that's a very good point. You should uh, talk to it about your parents, trusted individuals, if you're really curious about it, no. But I want to reiterate that our topic is, of course, no, mental health, mental awareness. So maybe that's why you are curious, but we have a very limited time, no, Kit?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
So we can all you can ask us maybe after this webinar so that we will have more time in explaining it to you. But it's a good thing
Mm-mm.
that you're curious about it because maybe Doc Kit, wala din silang mapagsabihan no? Or mapagtanungan. So Doc Kit is telling you that you can talk to it, to your parents about it. No? So I
If I may also doc checks, no, sometimes I know the youth does not agree that they can. Some youth don't agree that they can talk to their parents about it. Some youth are fortunate that they're able to. No, if in case you feel like you don't, I could share now with Dr. Manzo an article from the AACAP. It's the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. It's positive parenting strategies for parents, no, in dealing with children in the teenage years. Sometimes also we have to guide our parents because it's hard to open up if you feel like you won't be listened to, or if in the past it may seem to you that they're not listening. I understand, no, not all of us are exposed in a community that can be supportive. So but I think, no, most if not all parents come from a place of love and good intentions. It's a matter of empowering them and helping them how to respond. Sometimes they do not know how to respond. It doesn't mean that they mean that they're not supportive. No? So it's building education. I'd also like to respond. No, okay. I'd also like to respond. No, there was a comment a while back. Na sometimes it seems futile or useless to talk to someone. Now there may be children in the room or teens in the room who would rather keep quiet, keep to themselves. No, but I also noted that in the chat box, even in that silence, there is suffering. No, sometimes there is they're in that social, they're in that isolation or being alone brews negative thoughts, negative feelings. And I know that since most if not all kids, I would say all kids have goodness in their hearts, sometimes negative thoughts even lead to feelings of guilt. No, why am I thinking this way? No, so notice how, again, no, by keeping to ourselves, I know it protects you in a way. Diba? You wouldn't do that if you didn't feel that it protects you in a way. But also there are disadvantages to being to isolating ourselves. Diba? One is that solutions are usually not met. No, you are while maybe at first you're able to tolerate things, like brush it off, distract yourself, if we're not able to address the root cause of all this, whether it is an internal root cause, an external root cause, or a combination of the two, then there will be suffering that will not be addressed, and that may lead to more problems. Mm-mm. But definitely, I hear, we do recognize that sometimes youth are sometimes parents need to grow into understanding, grow into more effective communication patterns. I think that this webinar, is a start for your community to talk more about it. And there are a lot of resources now we can share. Some of the resources I'd like to share in the adults in the room is if you go to Center for Disease Control, CDC, there's CDC Positive Parenting, and the positive parenting tips there are are cut are placed according to different age group, positive parenting for infants, for children, grouped into the stages of childhood, teenager, and I'll also send over to the committee, to the society, yung what I talked about, yung positive parenting strategies for teens. Maybe, maybe it will be a way to help and encourage the youth to feel more open to adults. If first the adults learn how to be how to speak and behave in a way that is more promotive of open communication about mental health. Now also, kasi parang I do not, this is the limitation, I think, of talks. Talks are powerful, but at the end of the day, I'm sure you have a lot of questions. I'm seeing a lot of conversation in the chat, and not all, I'm sure, questions can be answered here, and not all thoughts can be addressed. I think another principle or another value I wish to highlight is as you grow older, you will realize that you have different perspective, diba? I'm seeing a bit of like argument or debate in the chat, diba? But we recognize that since we are all unique, sometimes people have different opinions from us. Sometimes we may have the same opinion with others. But I think the core value I'd like to highlight is respect, diba? Respect and recognition that just because a person has a different opinion, it doesn't mean that yours is not important. It doesn't mean that your opinion is not valued. It just means that there are differences in us. So it's important before we reject someone, before we judge someone, I think we have to approach each individual with kindness, with a positive view. Okay, and if we find that maybe our friend is a bit misguided, then in a non-judgmental tone, maybe ask, may I share my opinion? I think it's like this. If you really don't agree, then maybe you could share, maybe we can reach out to someone who can help us understand better, As children, your brains are quickly developing. I think it's why values are important to be talked about. We must respect one another. Okay? Okay? Just because we're different, it doesn't mean we cannot coexist peacefully. I think these are some of the values you have to learn while you're young, so that as you grow up, you grow into adulthood and you're the future of this world, diba? There will be more chance for peace. Okay? So I hope, I know that these are maybe not really comments that are not responding to questions, but I didn't want to leave this chat na parang we don't address these things. I also didn't want you to feel that you weren't heard. You are heard. Okay? Okay? Sige. So thank you. And I know many of you are sleepy, tired, and sa Saturday you should be having fun and hungry, diba? So si Doctora talaga is talking too much. But I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you, And know that I think that this is just a start. You can have continued conversation also. Okay?
Yes. Thank you. No, so I think we are the kids are getting hungry. No, and as much as we like to answer all your questions, we have limited time. But we encourage you, the kids. No, if you really want to talk to us, we will at the end of this webinar we can share our uh, email or right, the kid, so that if they want to ask something, they are very welcome. So I think um, there's a last question that I would like to read. Maybe Doc Arl can help me. Are there any hotlines po for students to call when they are having depression or when they want to ask for help? I think it's for
Opo.
DNA or
Yeah.
In Olongapo.
I believe, unfortunately, we don't have this kind of a hotline for our kids at the moment. But I believe your schools are very much concerned with your mental well-being, and the schools that we have this morning are thankfully very proactive in this advocacy as well. So these schools that we've invited this morning have their own mental health programs in their classrooms. So at the moment, if our kids are having some issues of their own, wag naman po sana. Their schools, their teachers, their guidance counselors, and of course us parents can be your hotline to reach out to for these kinds of concerns. So I hope I answered the question.
Yes, thank you, Doc. So again, I would like to thank everyone, no? And thank you also, Doc Arl again and Doc RJ for having us, me and Doc Kit. We are very happy to share, especially Doc Kit, her expertise about mental health in children. Doc Kit, do you have any last few words before we end our webinar? I think this is a very interactive session and a lot of us learned from you. So I hope, Doc Arl, there will be succeeding webinars about mental health in the future.
Yeah, we hope so too. We hope to be able to see you, our beautiful, very intelligent, and very helpful experts this morning. The kids and the parents and the teachers, we all learned a lot from you.
So I did type in the chat. No, if ever your Zoom is updated, you should be able to receive the file. No, yung positive parenting strategies. So that could be a good primer. Of course, as with any guide, it doesn't mean like everything is applicable. But for the adults in the room and maybe the kids in the room, diba? If you feel comfortable, you can download it, no, and maybe sit with your parents over mealtime mapa, or if your grandparents take care of you, or tita tito takes care of you, no, maybe we can look at this, no, see, no, if you feel that there is room for growth in your relationship, something you can review or share with your parents also. Second one is the link to CDC, no, Center for Disease Control, Positive Parenting. So definitely, no, improving parent-child relationship is something that is very salient, so that we help our children have a more positive relationship with themselves also, internally and with other people. So thank you for the opportunity. No, kids, I hope you are well. If ever you feel exhausted by this lecture, do something that will help you relax muna. For some, it might have been triggering, overwhelming. Take a break, take a rest. No? And I hope you have a restful weekend and week ahead. And Christmas pala. Advance, no? Far ahead, but advance. Merry
Malapit na,
Christmas.
yeah. I'm sure you guys have your own countdowns at home. Okay, if I may share my screen for the last few slides before we end. Thanks once again to our moderator and our speaker.
Thank you, Doc.
So, in recognition of our speakers and our speaker and moderator, we just want to present our certificate of appreciation for you, which reads as follows: for your valuable contribution, Dr. Francesca Rose de Leon Gacrama as moderator. For our lecture today, check in on you pala, you, capital Y-O-U, youth, talking about mental health and self-awareness, given today in continuation of our celebration for National Mental Health Month. And for Dr. Maria Cristina Kit Diaz, thank you for being such a great speaker this morning. For our topic in continuation of our said celebration. Maraming salamat po, our participants. You may ask for us to give you a certificate. The kids, if you should need it, the teachers, everyone who's interested, we will be providing you with a certificate of attendance. Just email us your full name and the certificate that you need to ocmsofficial@gmail.com. Okay? So medyo na-overwhelmed ba tayo at na-enlighten at the same time with our lecture? So to close formally, thank you kids for coming, parents, teachers, or guidance counselors. Maraming salamat po for being so involved in our children's mental health. We call in now our Vice President, Dr. Acosta, for his closing remarks. Dr. Acosta, please.
Hello, good morning po. Yes, to our speakers po, Dr. Diaz, thank you for a very informative lecture. It was helpful, definitely for the kids, for the youth. and as well as for the parents on how we can address these mental health concerns. Dr. Agakrama, thank you for getting back to us. I believe we had a lecture from you not so long ago. Thank you for following through. And yes, it's mental health. It's a very relevant issue today, especially for the adolescents. No, I promised na I wouldn't draw any comparisons, but during our time, siguro nung age ng mga parents ng mga kids na participants, when you're misbehaving, when you're feeling different, usually isi-set aside lang yan ng parents namin, and believing na it's sort of normal. But now we have all the help we have, and yes, I think that's both a good and a bad thing also, kasi living in a society where these social media things exist. I think the pressure and the other factors that can affect the mental health of the young ones are also increased. So dumadami yung source ng anxiety nila, yung source ng pressure nila. So it's a learning process both for the kids and the parents. So you help us understand. We can't promise that we will understand you every time, but it will make the process easier for the both of us. So these sessions are very important, I think. So one example, actually, when I was a kid, makulit ako eh. Tapos inano lang nila yon, inattribute lang nila sa bata eh, ganyan, makulit. And then I started having problems concentrating when I was in college, in med school. So na-diagnose ko yung sarili ko when I was studying psychiatry. Hindi ako makapila. I have my flight of thoughts ako. So I think I had ADHD. So it was very late na in my life na realize ko yon, and I didn't get any help. But I did try getting the medications late in life when I was reviewing for my specialty boards, and it did help. The concentration problems really just improve, no, with medication. So I was imagining what if naagapan, no? What if naagapan ako? So right now you just tell us what your problems are, and like Dr. Diaz and Dr. Agakrama said, all of your feelings are valid. So pag-usapan natin. And with that, thank you for participating. We hope may nakuha tayo sa discussions, and sa ulitin, we hope to see you again soon for more learnings. And have a good weekend po sa lahat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Acosta. So malapit na. Konting-konti na lang. Now, we would like to ask you all to open your screens, please. Hold on, I'm having some technical. Ayan. Please do us the honor of taking a video with you. So everybody, open your cameras and smile for just a few pictures for our photo op. Okay? Dr. Manzo, are you there?
Wait lang, sorry.
Just tell the kids, tell our audience.
Okay. Can you stop share, Wala?
Hold on. Stop share. There
Ayan,
you go.
okay. Ayan, there are the kids. Ready? First page, smile. 1, 2, 3. Second page. 1, 2. Third page. Last page. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so
Thank you,
I think
everyone.
that ends our webinar for this morning. Ayan, nasa na? Dr. Manzo, can you stop share, please?
I'm not sharing.
Are you not? What is happening? Okay, sorry. Okay, maraming salamat po ulit sa lahat ng umattend ngayong umaga. Thank you for sharing your Saturdays with us. So ang importante talaga is, we appreciate our children, we listen to them. Thank you to the adults for being so proactive for our children's health. Thank you so much, kids, everybody, teachers, our schools, our speakers. Maraming salamat po from the Olongapo City Medical Society. Have a good weekend ahead and a good week ahead and happy holidays. Bye-bye po.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Kit.
Bye po.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye
Bye po.
po.
Thank you po.
Kids.
Bye-bye.
Bye, kids. Mas
Terrorizing kids is always a joy.
Mas nakakatakot palang mag-lecture ng bata. Thank you so much, Kit and Chex. Maraming salamat. Maraming salamat sa inyo.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Pastoral
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Jay, paano ko isa-save yung mga sinend na link ni Kit?
Open.
How
Open.
do we...
I-open mo muna. Click
Click
mo
to
muna.
download. O yan. Click ko lang.
Madedirect ka na dun sa ano.
Click to open. Hindi na, masisave na ba yun?
Tapos
Ayan. And then save. Okay. Okay, next. Yung isa. And then save lang. Tama ba?
Yep.
Okay. Ayan. Okay. I got it. How about the other one? The other link. Ayan. Paano na isi-save yung link? I-picture lang? Ano gagawin?
Pwede niya i-bookmark
Ay,
ko.
sorry.
Sige lang, Doc. Mahilig ako mag-tech assist. May share nga. Doc,
Bookmark.
RJ, sinend ko po kay
Ayan.
Doc Chex yung how to open the doors para hindi ka mag-accept ng
Ayun sa
isa-isa.
Ayan.
If you
Naku.
Ayan. Sinend ko kay Doc Chex yung guide. Ito kasi picture. Pero if you click, Doc, yung participants icon, diba, you will see their names. Tapos at the bottom, you'll see invite, mute all. Tapos yung ellipses, yung tatlong dots.
Yung
So
more.
the three dots, yung three dots, notice how enable waiting room. So you can check that or uncheck that, Doc. Ayan.
Learn something new.
Thank you, Kit. Ang dami naman nating
Doc.
learning. Kasi talaga it happens all the time. Ongoing yung lecture and then there's people coming in and it kind of interrupts the speaker. Oo, maraming salamat ha. Huwag ka madadala sa amin. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much. Thank you
for the opportunity to teach.
Sabi na nga ni Chex, sana may susunod, di ba, Arl?
Nakabahan na nga ako nangihingi na ng next. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.